Yeah, thank you, Victoria. If you aren't familiar with Victoria, she's the communications director at Innersloth, the developers of Among Us. And in your experience, you've done many, many things, working for Kid Fox Games on Boyfriend Dungeon, the sexiest dungeon crawler there is.
No, there's so many sexy dungeon crawlers out there. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, also Unpacking, and most recently Bemba as well, and other things. So we'll see all of those in these questions. So, number one, how did you start in games?
Oh wow, I'm excited to see what these slides have. So I started in games basically not knowing that I could be in games. It was one of those things where like, my parents were like, you got the doctor, you got the lawyer, you got the accountant, and I was like, well, I hate all of those. Okay, great. So while I was in university, I did a degree in sociology with a double minor in communications and social studies and medicine because I was going to do healthcare stuff. I graduated, I had a mental breakdown because I was like, that's not what I want to do. And because I was trying to pay my way like through university and everything, I had basically done the thing where, like, not that I've ever done this, but when you're that thing where you like lie on a resume, you're like, yeah, I know how to work social media, and people are like, great, you're young, you know how to do this. I was like, yeah, great, I can learn on the job. And that's how I got a lot of marketing experience. And basically when I graduated and I had my whole depression phase, I applied for everything in games, and it turns out games need marketing. It somehow didn't occur to me that this was a thing, and that's basically like in a nutshell how it started.
Did you grow up in Vancouver, or what brought you to the area? And, oh, sorry, the other part's a spoiler, but...
Yeah, I was born here, so easy.
And what do you like about living here in Vancouver?
You know what you don't like appreciate until you move away is like grass and trees and a mountain, many mountain actually, and water. That was honestly, like coming back here, the games community here, I mean, the fact that you're all here is something that's really nice to have in Vancouver. I was living in Montreal for about 9 years while I was in university, but also I was working at Kid Fox Games, and they have a great games community there too, but it's really cold in the winter. It's like -40. I couldn't do it anymore. At some point I was like, I have to get out. But yeah.
It's a good reason. Definitely a common one for people coming here. So are there skills that you continue to use from your education and career before games?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, I think a lot of what I've been doing comes from a mixture of like childhood. I don't know if anyone's in this, like if you're like a second-gen immigrant child, having to translate government documents as a child for your parent, that's a big thing. So learning how to distill information into its simplest form was one of the things that I've taken with me for many, many years. But also just in sociology, they teach you a lot about the ways in which people think as a group, and especially when you are working with communities, that's very important.
One thing I like about your work is how you reference like actual studies and things like that, which as someone who doesn't read, I can't do studies.
It's okay, I can't math, so.
How did you start working with Among Us?
They slid into my DMs. But yeah, no, so as I was working at Kid Fox, basically my origin story was I write a lot of newsletters, I write a lot of blog posts, I do a lot of talks, and a big part of that was because at the time I was starting, I was like, there are no resources that I can find that are talking about this thing, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I was like, if I write about it, someone's going to tell me I'm wrong, and then I'll have them. They'll tell me I'm wrong, and I can talk to them, and they'll tell me how to do it right. It didn't really work out that way because it basically became a nice discussion between like different community managers and marketers and other people, which was really nice. And then because of kind of all of the work that I've done with different games, it turns out that the people who made Among Us, Innersloth, they knew what I was doing, they were interested in working with me, which was very cool, and I freaked out a little bit. I actually didn't believe that they wanted me on the team. I thought they were asking me to suggest someone. It turns out they were asking me.
Ooh, okay. so could you tell us one big success and one big failure that you've had in your games career?
Yeah. Okay, so technically the biggest success that I want to tell you, I can't tell you yet, you know, and I didn't let you ask questions about it, so one day I'll be able to talk about it. But there's a lot of different successes. I think in community management, one of the nice things, honestly, is always, it's so cheesy every time I say it, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I'll get like messages sometimes daily of like, thank you for helping me like bring my family together, or especially obviously during COVID, it was like, this was the one thing that kept us together and talking, and I've like rekindled a family relationship. I'm like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. But other like cool fun things was when I got to play Among Us with AOC on Twitch. That was really cool and really nerve-wracking. But I didn't freak out publicly, and that was a big success. The failure that I've had in my career is also very many. The thing is that no one ever talks about the failures unless you like really, really screw up. But there was this one time that I did a really big marketing campaign, like it was a contest. I had like 3 prizes and it was gonna be amazing, and I had like, I basically did this entire thing where you had a huge prize pack for each thing, and I had like 2 entries. It was so embarrassing. Oh God, but learned a lot from that, so.
A few other successes that I would like to talk about in your career. When you got to be on, was it on TV? On the...
Oh, the Jimmy Fallon thing?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. That was very cool.
Yeah, playing with like the kids from Stranger Things and on Jimmy Fallon. It's pretty crazy.
You could tell who did not play the game beforehand, like I suggested.
And also, very recently, the Among Us TikTok account just hit 4 million followers.
Yeah, thanks.
4 million followers, that's actually so ridiculous. Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh no, thank you.
How do you explain what is community management?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I explain it as creating social ties. Your whole focus, and with indie studios in particular, you often have it mixed up with marketing and PR, and they are kind of related. But when you do community management, it's focused on making sure that the people, whether it's the devs or the players, are creating social ties with each other, creating those interactions that are positive and uplifting for them, and helping them feel like whatever it is that they need from the game or from you, or like information, that you help facilitate that. I've heard some people call it like camp counselor. I don't know, I've never been a camp counselor, so maybe it is that.
Well, I did a really bad job the one time I was a camp counselor, and now I'm
Well, I want to hit this story later.
Okay, so you've helped many different games gain visibility. Can you take us through your process of assessing and advising a game's marketing plan? Look at all these games. This graphic is sick. Good job, Ali.
Yeah, this is really good. Thank you.
Website.
It was. Yeah, so when it comes to a game's marketing plan, I think of it in 3 different buckets. So the first is what is the development team trying to convey, right? You don't want an unhappy development team, obviously. Like, you want your team to be excited about the way that you're marketing the game, that you're still sticking to the vision that they have, the values, whatever it is. Then there is the second bucket, which is the player expectations. So why is this exciting to the player? Why should they care about it? What in particular is different and new about it? Usually people like to care about what's new rather than like what's better necessarily when it comes to like a product, especially when they're already playing something else that's very similar. And the third thing is just thinking of the core hook of the game. So this is basically the ways that you attract attention from the game, whether that's aesthetic, whether that is the title, like Boyfriend Dungeon, whether that is the gameplay mechanic itself, the theme. Usually I like really different, weird game genre mashups. It's a whole thing that goes into a marketing plan, but I would say those are like the 3 core buckets.
Okay. If you are trying to make your own game and market it, you should have been writing all those down. Okay, this is a fun one. What is your favorite video game outfit? It doesn't have to be your actual favorite, since you did express that would be a difficult.
It is really difficult. It was one of those questions where I was like, oh God. So for context, I did a talk about fashion in video games for GDC 2019. And then I stopped ever talking about that ever again because people kept asking me these questions. I was like, I don't know. I really like, and again, it's all subjective, but I really like Joker from Persona 5. I think that outfit is so sleek. There's also, I think, just like iconic outfits. I really love the outfits just like Mario, but like, cause you can turn into Luigi, Green Mario, sorry. There's Waluigi, there's Wario, like just that simple concept of the outfit and then changing the colors and the little letter and flipping it over, I think was really clever. And if anyone knows like where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, like that all red outfit, I'm like, damn, that's really cool. And the hat, oh my God.
What are wholesome games and why do you think they are popular?
Yeah, so I hesitate to define what a wholesome game is because I think that is something that is up for debate and also subjective. It's not something that's like a racing game. Wholesome is more a feeling, and I don't want to tell you how to feel about a thing, but generally, because I work with wholesome games, it's like a positive, uplifting and cozy feeling to it, whether that's the genre, the theme, the aesthetic, the story, the art, etc. Honestly, why wouldn't they be popular? It's awesome. It's one of those things where I think they've always been popular in their own way, right? Like if you grew up with a lot of Flash games, you had all the dress-up games. There's like Roy World, there's the My Scene, there's Barbie, Girls Go Games. Anyways, I think they've always been around, just maybe rebranded in different ways or considered like, more casual. But I think the reason that they resonate so closely with people is that it comes from such a personal place and it comes from such a place of contrast to what you would normally see in a lot of different games that it's really appealing, I think.
Yeah. Can you also describe what the Wholesome Games organization does, just for the people who don't know?
Oh yes, sorry. I really should explain that.
I should have asked you to do that first.
Okay, so Wholesome Games is basically an organization. We try to highlight different indie or AAA games that have a certain theme or aesthetic to them. We also do something called the Wholesome Direct, which is a showcase every single year that highlights wholesome games. Usagi-shima is one of those. And yeah, we are maybe doing some other fun, interesting things. But yeah, we also do like Wholesome Snack, which is a smaller showcase. I think next one will be around the Game Awards time.
Yeah, cool. And with Wholesome Games, you look at many pitches because many people submit their games to Wholesome Games to be presented in these events. So what do you look for in a game pitch?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of different kinds of games pitches, not just wholesome ones, but I feel like a good marketing answer is always it depends, so a lot of my answers always come from it depends. But one, also I talk about the hook a lot, but I want to know basically that you know what your game is and the vision of it. Some people can get super into it, which is awesome, but if you can't distill it down into like an elevator pitch, let's say, it tells me that, okay, the core theme is something that still needs to be worked on. I look at the development team itself. I really believe that I don't think there's like a silver bullet, hey, if you make this kind of game, you'll make millions of dollars, because that doesn't make any sense. Because everyone would be doing it. So it's really more investing in the team and the ideas, the values that they come from, and their execution of it, even if they haven't made a game before, that they've been thinking about the business sense of it, the marketing sense of it, the game design core. Having that be really clear is something that I love to see in pitches. And honestly, because I work in marketing, I want to see that they know what they're doing when it comes to the marketing end of things, because I think it's one of those things that people leave out and they don't account for, especially when they're budgeting things, that sometimes it doesn't work out for them very well, is what I'll say.
Thank you. Well, another thing, if you were planning to pitch a game, you should have wrote all those down. Okay. How do you do so many things? So Victoria, along with her work as the communications director at Innersloth and on Among Us, which is like one of the most popular brands around, like you can find Among Us stuff in stores literally around the world, not real ones and not real ones. But apart from that, also doing the stuff with Wholesome Games, also doing a monthly newsletter, also doing talks at events, and also like hanging out with people and somehow still having a social life. So how do you do so many things?
Yeah, so one of the things that as you do your games industry career, and I'm sure you might have heard of many times now, is like the concept of burnout, which is a very serious thing, and please take it very seriously. But I think the idea of burnout is that a lot of people think it's like doing too much, quotation mark, which can exist, but it's also just doing work that doesn't give you energy or fulfill you, right? So there's work that if I were doing it, I would suffer. So for example, like I love writing. That's like a huge thing that reinvigorates me, that helps sort out my mind, which is why I can do a monthly newsletter. Event planning for me, like what you do, is torture. I was at PAX West and someone asked me like what the schedule was for the team and I almost lost it. I was like, what? I don't know. It doesn't work out for my brain. It like stresses me out. It sends me into, I can't do it. So when it comes to like how I can do so much, it's less that I think that I do so much that like drains me. It's that I'm really excited to do it. I really found through a lot of trial and error things that work out for me. And yeah, it's what makes me happy. So I find the time for it and I don't get too tired from it, though I definitely have my moments.
That reminded me, I forgot a very big thing, that you're also writing a book.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot that part.
I should be writing that. Oh my God, what the heck?
So it's geostripe.artstation.com.
Wow. Shout out to Geostripe on ArtStation.
Who or what do you look to for inspiration in your work? This is a great image for this.
This is a very good image. So I'm super nosy. So I love listening to everything and learning from everyone. So whether or not so one of my favorite things, honestly, is just to peek at what everyone else on the team is doing, like what the programmers are doing, what the artists are doing, and asking them to explain every single thing to me. Sometimes they're busy, so I will respect that. But I think a lot of the time, especially in marketing, you tend to look at what other marketers are doing, which is still very important and really nice, and also community management. But when you look outside of the games industry, when you look at what other people are doing and have that interest in them, like I think I had a lot of my initial ideas from like community management from watching those lifestyle YouTubers, just like seeing how they built a community around them and how they took the time to respond to all the comments. I was like, this is really cool. I really like this. And then, God, I've been like listening in on yarn drama. So there's like drama in the knitting community that I just learned about. It's wild. Like people are faking their deaths. But look it up. But just looking at different industries and seeing like kind of what they're up to and the ways that they connect with each other is one of the biggest ways that I've found inspiration in my own work in community management and in marketing. Because again, it's good to get inspiration from your peers, but it's also nice to have that outside perspective.
Oh, I pressed the button. This is the big one.
Wow, shout out to Celeste.
Yeah. Do you have any predictions about the future of indie games for, say, the next 5 years?
No, not at all. It's one of those things where I don't think anyone knows what's happening right now. Like, what the heck is going on with Unity? God. Twitter is no longer Twitter. It's one of those things where I try not to necessarily... This sounds really bad because I know everyone's like predict the trends, and I don't think that makes any sense when people say predict the trends. But I hope basically for indie games that it becomes, my hope for it, and I'm not sure it's going there, but it becomes a more popular and sustainable model for different developers from different backgrounds to create whatever it is that they want. Because a lot of the time, like, you don't need to make the $5 million. A lot of budgets are set, like when you get indie game funding, is like $5 million. And I'm seeing more and more smaller funds that can help out indie games that just want to make a game for like $50,000, which is honestly, when you start looking for funding, which is the worst, one of the worst feelings in the world, something that is really interesting to me, and I hope to see like a lot more smaller bite-sized games.
Cool, yeah. What's one piece of advice you would give to a small development team that wants to make a commercially successful game?
God, that's a hard question to answer because I can't guarantee that you're going to make a commercially successful game. I wish I could. That'd be really awesome. Well, okay, so I have two different pieces of advice. One is don't listen to any advice that people tell you. Like it's never, nothing is a silver bullet. Take what it is that you need from that advice, whether you agree with it or you disagree with it, and use it as your own. Adapt it, make it yours. My second thing that, again, you don't have to listen to it either, but a big thing that I've seen is you don't need to spend, especially if when it's your first game, don't spend like 8 years of your life on it. A lot of people, like the scope creep where your game gets bigger and bigger and you're like, no, it's not done yet, it's not perfect. Like there's a lot of lessons to be learned from shipping a game. And I'm sure this has been told before, but it's really valuable to be able to know when to stop and when to ship. Because especially when you have 8 years or 5 years sunk into something and it ships and it doesn't do well because you didn't account for all these other things that come near the end of a game's development cycle, that can be a really hard thing. And especially again, if you spent a lot of time on it. For instance, how long did it take? I think Among Us took 7 to 8 months to develop and then they shipped it. It was only on mobile and it was not online at all, and I don't recommend that you do the same thing that they did at all. Oh my God, no. But you never know what's going to be a commercial success, and they learned a lot from shipping just games in general, and I think that is something that's really important.
Thank you. Oh, that's it.
Woo, we did it.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be I don't know if I talk too much. Do you have time?
Yeah, we could do a few audience questions.
Woo.
There are already some there. We'll go here, and we'll go here.
Yeah, thanks for the kind of Q&A stuff. It was very
Yeah.
interesting. And I just thought I'd ask, what are some of your favorite indie releases of the past like 5 to 10 years?
Oh my god, okay, so Dredge. What a fun game. Oh my god. I was like, it was 3 a.m. and my butt was clenched because I was so into that game. Peglin is also a really great game. I should really explain these. Dredge is like an Eldritch Horror fishing Tetris-y type game, and Peglin is like a Peggle roguelike. That's also, I think actually the creators from Victoria, Vancouver, somewhere in BC. Yeah, those two I would say for now.
Yeah, Dylan, the creator of Peglin, is from the interior, and he has expressed interest in comic, but he just hasn't had a chance yet. But we'll get him sometime soon.
Nice.
More of a professional question, like with the current state of Twitter, like, is there any good like channels or things to manage community, like grow it? Like, for me, for now, it's like only email and Discord, because all other channels are not reliable. Any things you can add?
Yeah, so no channel is reliable unless it's one that you own. So an email newsletter list is usually pretty great. But Twitter has more or less been a great way for like networking with other game developers. Not to say that it doesn't have its own audience, of course. But at the moment, for discoverability, TikTok is a really big one. And I know a lot of people are sick of hearing that, but TikTok is pretty great for it. And it's always kind of working on what you have time for and what you have energy for. So some people find a lot of success with Reddit. I have never found success with Reddit personally, because I have no idea how that thing works. And that's okay, because there's other community members who can help me with that. And I'm pretty strong with TikTok, so that's the one that I work with. But yeah, I would say, especially when it comes to social media platforms, because they're owned by like billion-dollar corporations, they're never safe, but it's always nice to experiment and try out kind of what sticks with you.
Thanks.
Oh my god, I love your goose shirt. That's great.
What's your opinion on like just drop marketing, where someone just drops a game, boom, it's on the market. No, obviously you need to have the right coordination to do this kind of thing. But with how Steam can put a game right in the front center of the page, you open up that platform, boom, that's the top ad that you see. Do you have any recommendations, or no, don't do this, this is a very, very bad idea? Just what are your thoughts on that kind of an approach?
I tend to, and again, no silver bullet advice, it depends, but I tend to not favor shadow dropping unless you can do it with a third-party platform of some sort. So like Xbox or like Nintendo or Game Awards, something that gets like guaranteed visibility on a shadow drop. Especially as an indie, it is very difficult to do that. I think there was someone who shadow dropped because Nintendo doesn't say an there was a Nintendo Direct last week and a State of Play last week, and they only announced that like the day before, and someone had been planning to shadow drop on that day. So your news can be eaten up by it, depending on whatever else someone wants to do. And I also know that that's easier said than done. Like, oh, just be part of Nintendo Direct. Duh. No, I get that it's difficult. So I tend to not suggest shadow drops. But if you have the right timing for it and there are the right set of conditions, maybe you have a really strong community, maybe you have a game before that was really popular, it could work. But that's my thoughts.
Hi, thank you for the Q&A. I would like to know, what are your tips for writing good blog posts to either promote a game or just some subjects that interest you?
Is this specifically just writing blog posts, like devlogs for your game as a promotional tool?
Yeah, or for when you're interested in a subject and you just want to suscitate interest from an audience.
Yeah, so that is, it depends. Oh, my hands are sort of depends. It really depends, but basically, depending on what your game is, if it has like a really strong theme, like I know there are some games, for example, that thrive off of really long blog posts. Dwarf Fortress was one of those games. You can either write it in a sense of like, as long as you have some interesting beats in your game that people are interested in keeping up with, that could be really exciting. It could be something where if your game is really focused on a specific theme that people really hook onto and you want to write more about that. Writing is its own craft and art form, obviously, so nailing the tone of that and making it an interesting read for your audience is a little different, but I would suggest trying out like smaller ones just to see like which ones are interesting. And a lot of marketing is honestly posting something and being like, did this do well, and tracking it and testing it to see what works and what stays with their audience and what they talk about, what words they use. That's really valuable, and then working from there.
Okay, I think we have time for one more.
There's one back there.
Oh, sorry. Thanks again for the talk. I just wanted to know, you have a vantage point over the whole like Among Us community. I was curious, like, what is the weirdest Among Us thing that you've seen like the fans make?
I mean that Mona Lisa thing was kind of weird. I don't know if I would call it weird necessarily. Like, there's been so many things, but there was someone who made like a fighting game, which was super cool. I don't know. God, there's so many weird memes out there. And like there's one, like, there's like the weird ones, and then there's the weird, oh, that's cool ones. But I think the fighting game was really cool.
It was very good. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Victoria.